In the shadowed depths of the late Devonian seas, over 360 million years ago, a creature swam that would challenge everything we thought we knew about evolution, about survival, about the very rules of life itself. Its body was sleek and shark-like, its jaw filled with rows of serrated teeth designed to rend flesh, yet it bore a crown unlike anything nature had ever produced, a bizarre, anvil-shaped dorsal fin that jutted from its back like a ceremonial altar. Scientists call it Stethacanthus. And even in the sparse fossil record, its existence feels like a defiance of natural law. How could a predator survive with such an unwieldy, seemingly impractical appendage? How could evolution, that unforgiving arbiter of survival, allow such an extravagant and grotesque structure to persist? The fossilized remains whisper to us across eons, suggesting a world of alien oceans teeming with life forms so strange that they border on the fantastical. Imagine, if you can, the cold, murky waters of an ancient reef, where armored placoderms prowled like living tanks, and delicate ammonites drifted like underwater balloons. Amid them, Stethacanthus moved with a deliberate, almost ceremonial grace, its fin erect, shimmering in the dim light. A signal, perhaps, a display, a warning, or a lure in a world where sight and shadow danced in constant tension. Its very existence confronts us with a paradox. Here is a predator, a survivor, yet its most striking feature seems maladaptive, a flamboyant contradiction. Paleontologists have long debated its purpose. Was the fin a weapon, a defensive shield, or was it a mating display, a primitive billboard of sexual selection that predated the flamboyance of the modern bird of paradise by hundreds of millions of years? The answer is elusive, obscured not just by the wear of geological time, but by the profound strangeness of its anatomy. Unlike the smooth, hydrodynamic forms of most early sharks, the dorsal fin of Stethacanthus was coated in dermal denticles, tiny, tooth-like scales that gave it a rough, bristling texture. Viewed under a microscope, these denticles reveal a shocking level of specialization, a convergence of form and function that hints at behaviors we can only speculate about, signaling rivals, intimidating prey, perhaps even ritualized combat among males. Its jaw, too, tells a story of evolutionary experimentation, less refined than the deadly efficiency of later sharks, yet perfectly adapted for the Devonian battleground of corals and reefs, where speed and surprise outweighed raw power. And yet, despite these adaptations, one cannot ignore the central mystery. Why design a fin that seems to slow you down, to make you more visible, more vulnerable? Evolution is rarely wasteful, yet here, nature indulged in something almost whimsical, almost artistic. Some paleobiologists suggest that this fin was only present in males, a sexual dimorphism that would explain why such a seemingly counterproductive trait persisted. In that interpretation, the fin was less about survival than about reproduction, an echo of the universal biological imperative that drives life not toward efficiency, but toward the perpetuation of genes, toward the extremes of display, aggression, and attraction. The fossil record offers tantalizing glimpses, impressions of fin structure preserved in fine sediment, showing the curvature, the brush-like texture, even hints of coloration. It is as though nature, in its earliest experiments, dared to create something that was simultaneously practical and theatrical, a creature that embodies both the brutality and the poetry of evolution. Imagine a male Stethacanthus drifting through the coral labyrinths, the anvil fin catching the flickering light, signaling dominance, warning rivals, enticing mates. Its presence redefines the Devonian seas, transforming them from a mere battlefield of predators and prey into a theater of evolutionary spectacle, where survival was not the only prize, but attention, influence, and reproductive success. And yet, for all its strangeness, Stethacanthus was a real creature, not a myth or a creature of imagination, and its fossils compel us to confront the unpredictability of evolution. The more we study it, the more it undermines our assumptions about what is logical in natural selection, forcing us to reconsider the idea that evolution is a strict, linear march toward perfection. Instead, we glimpse a world of experimentation, of trial and error, of extravagance and beauty alongside utility and ruthlessness. Its teeth hint at predation, its body at stealth and agility, yet its dorsal fin remains the heart of the mystery, a paradoxical flourish, a living enigma frozen in stone. And as we delve into this ancient epoch, we begin to see the Devonian seas not as static tableau, but as a dynamic arena where creatures like Stethacanthus thrived, evolved, and vanished, leaving behind fragments of a world that no longer exists, yet speaks to us in whispers of tooth and fin. The existence of Stethacanthus reminds us that life is not bound by our expectations, that nature is capable of inventiveness far beyond our imagination. It challenges our perception of what is possible, what is necessary, what is efficient. It invites us to wonder, if evolution could produce such a creature once, could it not do so again, somewhere, in some hidden corner of the Earth or beyond? And as the sedimentary layers close over its fossilized remains, as the eons press on, the story of Stethacanthus becomes more than a tale of strange anatomy. It becomes a meditation on survival, beauty, and the audacity of life itself, a reminder that the history of life is as bizarre as it is profound, and that sometimes the creatures that should not exist are the ones that teach us the most about the nature of existence. As we peer deeper into the physiology of Stethacanthus, the enigma of its dorsal fin begins to unfold, not in the clarity of certainty, but in the tension between form and function, between the known and the unknowable. The fin, which appears almost ornamental at first glance, was constructed with a sophisticated internal architecture. Beneath the rough denticle-covered surface lay cartilage structures that suggest rigidity, yet with subtle flexibility, a combination that would allow the fin to withstand strikes, perhaps from rivals or predators, without collapsing. Each dermal denticle was arranged in overlapping layers, forming a texture akin to chainmail, and their microscopic orientation hints at a directional purpose, potentially amplifying visual cues or even channeling water flow in a way that enhanced maneuverability in the turbulent reefs. This was no haphazard growth. This was a calculated evolutionary gamble, one that placed spectacle at the forefront of survival strategy. Biomechanical models suggest that the fin may have also functioned as a signaling device during courtship. Modern analogues, from the elaborate crests of male fish to the flamboyant plumes of birds, show that evolution repeatedly favors display structures, sometimes even at a cost to efficiency or concealment. Stethacanthus may have been an early experiment in sexual selection, a precursor to the extravagant dances and iridescent colors that would evolve millions of years later in other lineages. But to focus solely on the fin is to underestimate the intricacy of the creature as a whole. Its jaws, for instance, were uniquely adapted for a dual feeding strategy. Unlike modern sharks that rely on sheer force and speed, Stethacanthus possessed teeth with subtle curvature and serration, designed both to seize soft-bodied prey like early cephalopods and to scrape morsels from coral surfaces. Its jaw musculature, inferred from the attachment points on fossilized cartilage, indicates a balance between rapid snapping motions and slower, crushing bites, allowing it to exploit multiple ecological niches. It was an opportunistic predator, a generalist, yet one with a signature flourish that made it unforgettable. The evolutionary pressures of the Devonian seas were relentless. Predators like the armored placoderms, some larger and heavily plated, roamed these waters, their crushing jaws capable of shattering bones and shells alike. To survive in such a world, Stethacanthus had to be adaptable, agile, and intelligent in its hunting tactics. Fossil evidence hints at a nocturnal lifestyle, with enlarged sensory canals along its head and body, primitive lateral lines that could detect minute vibrations in the water, allowing it to track prey in low-light conditions. In this sense, the odd fin may have played a secondary role in stealth or intimidation, a bluff to predators and rivals, enhancing survival while simultaneously serving reproductive purposes. The evolutionary implications are staggering. Here was a creature that defied simple categorization. It challenges the idea that natural selection always produces creatures optimized for efficiency. Instead, it suggests a world in which evolutionary experimentation was not only tolerated, but sometimes rewarded. The Devonian period, often called the Age of Fishes, was a time of profound innovation and diversification. Vertebrates were exploring body plans, feeding strategies, and reproductive behaviors with a freedom that would diminish as ecosystems stabilized. Stethacanthus, with its ornamental fin and versatile hunting methods, represents the apex of this evolutionary creativity. Fossil assemblages from North America and Europe show that Stethacanthus was not a rare anomaly. Its remains are scattered across shallow marine deposits, indicating that this strange shark-like fish occupied a widespread ecological niche, coexisting with early ray-finned fishes, placoderms, and the first tetrapod ancestors pushing toward land. Each fossil tells a fragment of the story, from isolated fine impressions to near-complete skeletons, revealing both its anatomy and the environment it inhabited. There is evidence, for instance, of sedimentary structures consistent with reef complexes, suggesting that Stethacanthus was a predator of intricate coral labyrinths, negotiating tight spaces with its flexible, streamlined body, while using its fin as both a display and perhaps even a tool for navigating obstacles. This raises questions about behavior that are tantalizing but impossible to answer definitively. Did males congregate in colonies to display their fins, a ritualized competition reminiscent of birdleks? Were the dorsal structures also used to establish dominance hierarchies among juveniles, ensuring that only the fittest individuals survived to reproduce? The fossil record can hint, but it cannot confirm. To imagine the behavior of Stethacanthus is to step into a cinematic reconstruction of prehistoric life, where survival was as much about psychology as it was about speed or strength. Beyond the fin, the skin and dermal denticles themselves offer clues to hydrodynamics and protection. Unlike modern sharks, whose denticles primarily reduce drag, Stethacanthus had denticles with variable sizes and orientations, some bristle-like, some flattened, which would have altered water flow in complex ways. It is possible that these structures created turbulence along the back, enhancing stability during rapid maneuvers or even producing sounds detectable by other individuals, an acoustic dimension to its communication that we are only beginning to appreciate. The combination of anatomy, ecology, and evolutionary context paints a picture of a creature that is both familiar and alien, a predator that obeyed certain rules of biology while flouting others. It reminds us that the paths evolution takes are not predetermined, that experimentation can produce results both functional and extravagant, and that the history of life is littered with creatures that challenge our expectations. And yet, for all its complexity and apparent perfection in its niche, Stethacanthus would not survive the mass extinction events that loomed on the horizon. Its lineage, like so many others, would vanish, leaving only fragments in stone, puzzles for paleontologists, and questions for us about the fragility and resilience of life. As we study the minute structures of its fin, the curvature of its teeth, the spacing of its sensory canals, we begin to understand not just the mechanics of an extinct species, but the underlying principles that guide evolution itself. Variation, selection, and adaptation coupled with serendipity and unpredictability. There is a cinematic rhythm to these discoveries, a tension between the visible and the invisible, between the functional and the ornamental, between what survives and what perishes. Stethacanthus embodies this tension, existing as both a biological fact and a narrative symbol of evolutionary audacity. And as we reconstruct its world, diving mentally into Devonian oceans that no human has seen, we are forced to confront a humbling realization. Life, in its earliest chapters, was capable of inventiveness and oddity far beyond our imagination, producing forms that seem almost too strange to be real. This creature, with its bizarre dorsal fin and adaptive versatility, stands as a testament to that creativity, a reminder that the story of life is not linear, not predictable, and often more beautiful and terrifying than we can comprehend. The deeper we dig, the more we encounter questions rather than answers, layers of complexity that ripple outward, like the currents of the ancient seas. Every fossil of Stethacanthus is a whisper across eons, a fragment of a narrative that intertwines biology, behavior, and the relentless drive to survive and reproduce. And in that narrative, we glimpse the paradox at the heart of evolution. That extravagance and efficiency, ornament and utility, can coexist in ways that defy our expectations, leaving behind mysteries that continue to captivate and confound us today. Yet, even as we marvel at the ingenuity of Stethacanthus, we must confront its inevitable disappearance, a reminder that evolution's experiments are often fleeting, brilliant flashes of life extinguished by forces both gradual and catastrophic. The Devonian seas, once a theater of biodiversity and innovation, were not immune to the tectonic shifts, climate fluctuations, and ocean anoxia that periodically reshaped the planet. As shallow reefs began to collapse and oxygen levels dropped, species finely tuned to their niches, creatures like Stethacanthus, faced a brutal reckoning. Its elaborate dorsal fin, once a signal of dominance and allure, could no longer compensate for the upheavals in its ecosystem. The very trait that may have secured its reproductive success became irrelevant in the face of environmental collapse. Fossil deposits show a decline in Stethacanthus specimens leading up to these extinction pulses, a silent testament to the vulnerability of even the most extraordinary adaptations. In these final chapters, we are forced to reflect on the impermanence of biological splendor. Every curve of the fin, every serrated tooth, every bristling dermal denticle preserved in stone is a reminder that life is simultaneously resilient and fragile. The disappearance of Stethacanthus was not just a biological event, it was an erasure of a narrative, a story that had unfolded over millions of years, full of struggle, innovation, and wonder. Yet in its absence, we find lessons that resonate across the aeons. Extinction, often perceived as loss, also illuminates the processes of evolution in their starkest terms. It reveals the trials of natural selection, the delicate interplay between innovation and vulnerability, and the way chance, environment, and biology converge to shape the fate of species. The story of Stethacanthus is a meditation on these dynamics, cautionary tale, and an inspiration. Its extravagant fin, its adaptive versatility, and its ultimate extinction compel us to reconsider our assumptions about the rigidity of evolutionary rules. Life is not merely about efficiency or survival. It is about experimentation, about exploring the boundaries of form and function, even if that path leads to oblivion. And in this reflection, we confront a deeper philosophical truth. The significance of a species is not measured solely by its longevity, but by the questions it poses, the imagination it sparks, and the insights it offers into the nature of existence itself. Stethacanthus, though gone, challenges us to see evolution not as a linear march toward perfection, but as a creative force, capable of generating beauty, complexity, and mystery, often simultaneously. Its fossils, scattered across distant continents, become touchstones for wonder, connecting us to a world that is impossibly remote in time, yet intimately close in the questions it raises about life. We are drawn to imagine the currents of ancient oceans, the flickering light filtering through reef canopies, the shadows cast by male Stethacanthus displaying their fin in ritualized competitions, unaware of the extinction that would one day claim them. In this act of imagination, we participate in a dialogue with deep time, a conversation that asks us to consider our own place in the vast continuum of life. The echoes of Stethacanthus remind us that the rules governing life are flexible, provisional, and sometimes delightfully counterintuitive. Nature's inventiveness is boundless, and the creatures it produces, however ephemeral, bear witness to a cosmos that is at once ordered and chaotic, predictable and whimsical. And as we trace the final lineages of Stethacanthus to the edge of oblivion, we are reminded that every species, no matter how strange or fleeting, contributes to the tapestry of existence, adding threads of form, function, and wonder that endure beyond their disappearance. In the end, Stethacanthus is more than a scientific curiosity. It is a philosophical mirror, reflecting our own fascination with life's mysteries and our yearning to understand the forces that shape it. Its improbable existence, its audacious adaptations, and its silent departure from the seas challenge us to embrace uncertainty, to celebrate the creativity inherent in evolution, and to acknowledge that the story of life is neither orderly nor final. It is a tale of endless possibility, where even creatures that should not exist leave an indelible mark on our imagination, on our understanding of biology, and on the way we perceive the fragile, fleeting, and beautiful world we inhabit today. And so, as we close the chapter on Stethacanthus, we are left with a haunting reflection. In the dance of evolution, survival is not the only measure of success, and the boldest experiments, those that stretch the boundaries of form and function, may vanish, yet they leave a legacy more profound than mere persistence. In the stone and sediment, in the fossilized fin and teeth, we find not just evidence of life, but a meditation on impermanence, ingenuity, and the relentless, often inexplicable drive of nature to create, to adapt, and to astonish. The Stethacanthus should not exist, and yet it did, and in its improbable story, we find a window into the raw, untamed artistry of life itself, a reminder that the universe of living things is stranger, more inventive, and far more awe-inspiring than we could ever have imagined.